Hello, students of HSA Belmont, better known as Eagles. How are you? And I wanted to give you this celebrating Black History Month message. I don't know that even the students in my class have ever seen me in a tie, but I went to a historically Black college, and we took Black History Month pretty seriously. So that's why you see me dressed as well as I can. I hope that I'll be speaking as well as I can because we took it seriously and we always wanted to bring our best. You'll also notice that on the bottom of the screen, I have my email address so that if any of you have questions to anything that I'm talking about during this next few minutes, certainly don't hesitate to email me. Those of you, again, in my class know that I don't like to necessarily have one-way conversations. I like to have a conversation. So therefore, if you have any questions or challenges to anything that I'm saying here today, certainly email me. So let's go ahead and get started. Here we go. So one of the things that I wanted to do with the time that I have here is just kind of put the whole Black History Month in context, kind of think about those things that we should be thinking about. I know a lot of times we kind of highlight those people who have had a significant impact in Black history, but just want to kind of put all that in context and then kind of think about, what we should be thinking about as we think about Black History Month and maybe even what Black History Month ought to really be about. So the first question here is, what is Black History Month? So the story of Black History Month began in 1915, 50 years after slavery was abolished in the United States. So pretty much we can say that the story of Black History Month started over 100 years ago. In 1915, the historian Carter Woodson and the minister Jesse Moreland started the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. This group was dedicated to recognizing the achievements of Black Americans. The group declared the first National Negro History Week in 1926. They chose the second week of February because that's when Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass had their birthdays. So already we see that, again, the history of Black history started, Black History Month started over 100 years ago. We see that in 1926, it started off as a week, and it was the second week of February was selected because that's both Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass's birthday. So let's move on. In the years that followed, mayors of cities across the United States began recognizing Negro History Week. By the late 1960s, thanks in part to the civil rights movement, Negro History Week became Black History Month on many college campuses. So when we talk about the civil rights movement, we know that people like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and a host of other leaders, a whole host of folks, were certainly a part of what we call the civil rights movement. Some people refer to it as a struggle, but certainly that movement was led by Black people. And as we're going to learn in the upcoming reading, a lot of people, even outside of Black people, benefited from the civil rights movement. In 1976, President Gerald Ford officially recognized February as Black History Month. He called upon the public to seize the opportunity to honor the too often neglected accomplishments of Black Americans. Black History Month is also recognized in Canada and the United States. So for a long time, people felt that some of the contributions and the accomplishments of Black Americans in this country were not being recognized. And so the idea was that we would have a month where those accomplishments would be recognized. Now, there's always been some debate about dedicating a single month to the history of one race. Morgan Freeman, an African American actor, you all may have seen him before. I love some of his movies. He was a critic of Black History Month. And he said, I don't want a Black History Month. Black history is American history. So as we move forward here, I really want to kind of analyze Morgan Freeman's comments, particularly those ones that where he says Black history is American history. And I kind of alluded to it as we talked about the civil rights struggle. So let's move on and let's take a look at what I may have meant and certainly what Morgan Freeman meant. So why would Morgan Freeman make this statement? Black history is American history. He probably made this statement because the civil rights struggle, which in large part was led by African Americans, but included many of us and impacted all of us. So it was inclusive of a lot of Black folks, African Americans who were out there protesting and that kind of thing. And certainly Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and others were some of the leaders of the civil rights struggle. But at the end of the day, it impacted all of us. And we'll get to that on the next slide. The civil rights struggle included African-American leaders that you all may know of and those that you have yet to study. So the ones that you probably already know of, people like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Rosa Parks, and then there were people that you might not be as familiar with. Angela Davis, whose picture is all the way to the left in the screen there. She was a academic scholar, and she was with the Black Panther Party, and they did a lot to make sure that inner city kids got fed. Stokely Carmichael, his picture is next, better known as Kwame Ture. He did a lot and he talked a lot about Pan-Africanism at that particular time that brought a lot of African Americans and Black people across the globe together. Adam Clayton Powell was the first congressman, Black congressman from the state of New York. And one of my favorites, an unsung hero in the civil rights struggle, Ella Josephine Baker, who kind of played a behind the scenes role, but a very important role, as she was responsible for interacting with some of the Black leaders, such as W.B. Du Bois, Thurgood Marshall, Philip Randolph, and Martin Luther King. Her involvement in the civil rights struggle was for 5 decades. Some of the things that I love about her was just some of the things she said in some of her speeches and talks and that kind of thing, some of the statements she made. One of them is right there on the screen that we see: strong people don't need strong leaders. Those of you who have my class in character education know that we talk a lot about leadership, and I just love this statement from her. One that I love even better is when she said, "We are the leaders we have been looking for." She said, "We are the leaders that we have been looking for." So her thought was that if you're looking for leadership, look in the mirror. So it's almost like leadership from within. But those are some of the folks in the civil rights struggle or in the civil rights movement that we may not be as aware of as we are others. But there were many people a part of the civil rights movement. Many of them were Black. And so that's why we talk about the civil rights struggle in terms of it was led by Black folks, but it benefited all. And so that may be one of the reasons why Morgan Freeman made the statement, Black history is American history. One of the other reasons why Morgan Freeman might have made this statement can be seen as we look at some of the results of the civil rights struggle or the civil rights movement. And so let's just take a look at what happened. So what happened was that these leaders had gained enough influence that now Congress needed to begin to act. And so we had the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and it stated that segregation on the grounds of race, religion, or national origin was banned at all places of public accommodation, including courthouses, parks, restaurants, theaters, sports arenas, and hotels. So what this meant was that people of color, Black people, could no longer be banned from being able to go into sports arenas, hotels, theaters, restaurants, courthouses, and even parks, which had been a common practice before. There were certain places that Black people and other people of color could not go. So the Civil Rights Act of 1964 kind of took away that. And now all of these places had to serve Black people and all minorities, all people of color, and couldn't ban them based on their skin color. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 also brought what we call Title VII. They call it Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. And this was based on people being able to work. So for a long time before 1964, women, there were places that would not allow women to work. And so as we begin to look at it, I want you to think about if your mom, your auntie, your grandmother, if they couldn't go out there and work and be able to put food on the table and provide you with things that you need based on them having a job. So before 1964, there weren't as many jobs available to women because it was easy for an employer to say, no, we don't want women to work here. So the Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, that the Civil Rights Act and the Civil Rights movement brought about people being able to not be discriminated against in terms of where they work based on race, religion, national origin, and gender, okay? It also paved the way for what we know now as the Voting Rights Act. You'll learn more about the Voting Rights Act. This has certainly been talked about in our politics over the last 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. It's been in the news and being talked about in our politics. And then also the Fair Housing Act, which meant that people couldn't be banned from being able to live in certain homes or in certain neighborhoods or whatever the case may be. So all of this was based on a movement that was led by African Americans, many of the names we know, okay, that was to the benefit of more than just themselves. There was the benefit of people all across this country based on race, religion, national origin, all of those different things, gender, all of those different things, okay? So that's probably one of the reasons why Morgan Freeman would make that statement, Black history is American history. Let me close with this. So there was a time when someone asked me, well, Bennett, what do you think about Black history? What does Mr. Williams think about Black history? What does it mean? What does all this mean? And so the answer I gave was kind of like this. I've had a chance to kind of formalize it more than the answer I might have given at the particular time, but it kind of looked like this. We celebrate Black History Month because of our contribution to American civilization and history over the last 400 years. However, we should also understand our contribution to world history that dates back tens of thousands of years ago. I challenge all of you to understand the contribution of Black people and the contribution of your own ethnicity, gender, and generation toward American and world history. And so you'll see that to the right, I have photos of Black folks that have made significant contributions to civilization here in America and around the world. And I even have folks, I even have one individual who's made a contribution tens of thousands of years ago, as you'll see the picture in the middle there. So happy Black History Week, happy Black History Month, and thank you all for this opportunity to speak to you about what Black History Month means to me.